Okay, it's a little after 11. Time to call to order the Homeless Committee meeting, the Committee of the Whole for the Anchorage Assembly. And I'd like to begin with introductions, and why don't we start with Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Pete Peterson.
Forrest Dunbar.
Dick Training. Mr. Evans.
Linda Freeman, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Mark Lassard, also Department of Health and Human Services, Emergency Preparedness Plan.
And if we could go around also, so we know who all is here and who everybody is representing. Michelle.
Michelle Brown, and I'm Debbie Kelly from EDM.
Lisa Aquino, Catholic Social Services.
Lisa Caldera, Brother Francis Shelter.
Sean Hayes, Brother Francis Shelter.
Sir.
Greg Newman, Mayor's Office.
Beth Wilson, the Division of Behavioral Health.
Jane Street, United Way.
Heidi Beverly.
Warren Jones, First Catholic Church, Bayback.
Jan Jones, First Catholic Church, Bayback. Carol White, from Zion Church.
Carrie Collins, Last County Finance Corporation. Valley Hills County.
Sorry, Linda Garrison, Campbell Park Community Council, Homeless Vagrancy Committee.
Lisa Souter, Beans Cafe, Children's Lunchbox.
Marcy Sherwood, Cook Housing Authority. Fiona Johnson, Westwood Center.
Rick David, Pastor Becker Foundation.
Eric Platt, ACLU.
And people in the cheap seats.
Paul Racker, NeighborWorks. Louise Turner, Marshall, APAC.
Sharon City Legislative Aids. Andy Honest, Green School Clerk's Office. Trish Canish, Interested Citizen. Glenn Ackerman, Interested Citizen.
Ron Oliva, violated victim of homeless and their agencies.
John Lamantia, Anchorage Gospel Rescue.
Kate Simi, the Community Resources Project for Mental Health Court.
I assume that's everybody back there. And we've been joined by Mr. Flynn and Ms. Ray Jackson. Nancy Burke, the homeless coordinator, is running a bit late, so we're going to flip the agenda a little bit and move down to area number 4, the downtown, midtown emergency facilities and surroundings, and get a report from those various agencies. And just a reminder to everybody, we do obviously have a full room and there's people all over, so when you're giving a report, please talk as loudly as possible so we all can be heard. So with that, Beans Cafe, Lisa?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Things have been quite busy on campus, and I know that Lisa and Lisa are going to talk a little bit about some plans that we have as a campus moving forward for fall, and I'll let them expand on that a little bit. Our numbers are still up for this time of year, but we are seeing people coming, engaging in services, which is what we want. We want people there, meeting with case managers at Brother Francis, working with our client services staff. Operating funding is certainly a challenge for us as we have this increased need. So we're looking for different options for that as well. But all in all, the partners in the community have been great, working very closely with Nancy Burke, and we're excited for more vouchers to come online and get more people housed and off campus.
Since our last meeting, Lisa, have there been any change in the status of the level of crowding or?
No, I don't really think there's been much change. I can't speak for BFS for their numbers, but we've seen fairly steady numbers. Some days spike, some days go down. It depends on the time of the month. It depends on if some shareholder checks have come out, different things like that. But it's been busier than the norm for sure for the summer, and just more people on campus as well.
Questions for Lisa? Downtown Soup Kitchen. We have somebody.
She was parking when I was parking.
Okay, we'll come back to her. Brother Francis Shelter, Lisa.
You got the other Lisa today.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lisa Caldera, Director of Brother Francis Shelter, and what I have is also an increase of shelter use. Thus far this year, the day with the most people utilizing, or the month with the most people utilizing the shelter is actually May. It was 1,143 people came through the shelter's doors, which is on par with our winter months. So May, June, July have all been increased. We were at capacity for much of May, and then the capacity numbers went down. However, the numbers of individuals who were then camping on the property went up. So we went from about 30 on average in May to the range being between 50 and 80 individuals in July. Which, as you know, is not how we traditionally use our spaces. So it did put a demand on staff. It definitely had other repercussions. However, we do have an exit strategy, and we've begun conversations with Beans Cafe, and hopefully have a meeting with Lieutenant Carson next week to talk about that with the CAP team. But on August 31st, we will go back to the campus closing at 5 p.m., which means you're either checking in for the evening or you are vacating the premises. So that was a change that we decided to make this summer when there was nowhere else for people to go, essentially. Hopefully by mid-September or so, things will be back to normal for us. And the idea that we are sheltered inside, come on in.
What's driving the hope that by mid-September things will be back to?
What's the exit plan in 3 phases? But going from informing the individuals who are outdoors to then on the 31st, going back to our practices, which was to walk around the campus and discourage individuals from sleeping overnight. We've got cots down there, mats, so it's figuring out, working with Beans to organize storage of people's belongings that they've collected this summer. Not exactly sure where everyone will go because we couldn't necessarily add 80 people to our capacity. But we will have to see. But it's going to be a coordinated effort to get the message out and get back into the practice of clearing the campus at 5.
Well, and also just to keep in mind too, the vouchers are gonna end, all these vouchers are gonna be coming online, so hopefully that will take some pressure off of the system too. We're working in that framework as well.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Covenant House.
So the last quarter, our numbers, we've averaged 55, which is high for Covenant House in the summertime. Since we last had our conversation, the 3 out of the 5 people that were murdered in Anchorage were kids that were familiar to us. And, you know, it's some of the things that our outreach team are telling us that the reason why the kids are coming in and that we have more kids in our shelter, which is a great thing, is that they're scared on the streets, and that kind of the ability to hide in the woods, and when that's kind of eliminated, they feel they're more open and, you know, are susceptible to being victimized. So all that process, I think that I'm proud of our outreach team. We're excited to be a partner with the municipality on that small investment, because we're seeing tremendous things happen with that small investment. So some of the things is 4 days a week, 6 a.m., they're out talking to kids, bringing them into breakfast. We're seeing more of those kids stay with us. We've had 38 kids do the TAVS-PDAT on level of vulnerability. So our team is highly trained and really kind of focused and engaged. I'm like Lisa and, well, the Lisas. I'm very hopeful for September, because in September we're doubling the number of transitional living beds. So we have long-term housing solutions for some young people. So we're excited to have those come online. It's a partnership between Covenant House and Cook and the Tribal Council. And so it really, you know, I'll definitely, when we decide the opening date, I'll get you guys all there, because all your efforts have really helped us kind of continue to focus on the housing piece of things. You know, there's some anxiety about whether or not, as we continue with, you know, the movement of people from camps, what's happening. I actually just had a meeting with my staff, and I'm sorry I was late, but one of the things that I was talking to them about is that I think it's all of our jobs as citizens to explain to people, because I know that you get this question every day like I do, which is there seems to be more homeless. And I think I really, you know, I had a great awareness of it yesterday. From my house, Valley of the Moon, to the dog park, University Park, I counted 28 people that were on corners as I was driving, of which 7 additional people were actually passed out in flower beds, various things. And the most eye-opening was on the corner of the New Seward and Benson, or Northern Lights or whatever that one is, at Allen and Peterson. There was a person passed out in the flower bed, and there were people all around waving political signs. And I thought to myself, we've stopped looking, and I applaud your efforts to keep a focus on this and to say that there are solutions. Not everything is in line yet. And so, despite people's belief that social services is creating homelessness, we're just trying to respond, and the needs are much greater than they've ever been. So I think as a community, we have to continue to find the resources and make hard decisions about whether we're going to fix that road or we're going to help someone more vulnerable, because right now it's nothing more apparent than there's great need out there.
Questions for Allison? One of your comments, Allison, you're talking about some of your younger people feeling more vulnerable. It sounded like these were people that were camping in the woods and have been, perhaps, maybe I'm reading into this, but displaced by our crackdown on camps. Is that the word you're getting?
There's some of that. There's and I know that we've had this conversation at every one of these meetings. We can't fix homelessness unless we also look at substance abuse issues and some of the addiction issues. And, granted, I think there was a great article in the ADN about the young woman that was murdered that had such a history of substance abuse. But still the vulnerability of camp and kind of hiding, that young girl is a great example of just a feeling of fear that she had expressed to all of us trying to do everything we could, a family trying to do everything that we could, and that there is just a, right now, it's not safe out there, and I just think it's a combination. It's not just a housing issue. It's not just a employment. It's a crescendo of multiple things, and trying to get all those resources lined up. But yeah, it was a great example of someone that probably would have been deeper in the woods in a camp versus sitting on the middle of a coastal trail and getting murdered.
Sure. Chairman?
Mr. Flynn, sure.
Allison, I don't want you to betray any confidence or confidentiality, but can you speak a little bit more? You mentioned, I think, 3 of recent homicide victims were people you were familiar with.
Yeah.
Had they been tenants?
We were familiar with them through outreach in various stays, went in and out of the facility. They weren't currently residents, so it wasn't a situation where they left our building. And but we work with a very at-risk population, and I'm not sure that I could ever say that I might not have that conversation with you. But really, all the incidents were another one of them. We were trying to get the person into some substance abuse help, and it just was not a place for this young person to go. So, they continued to engage in very high-risk behaviors, and, the results is that high-risk behavior and the amount of it on the streets, that young person's life ended.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Allison. Just want to note for the record that we've been joined by, a little while ago, by Mr. Weddleton, who seems to be sporting a badge of some sort. Mr. Sheriff.
Coffee with a cop.
Okay. Nice. Has someone from the downtown soup kitchen come in? Yep. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sherry George.
Sure.
Sorry, I was sleeping.
No problem.
We were both Francis and sheltering 3 women a night. I'm in the process of getting ready to do like 10 more to increase it to 40. We went through clients of 50. We turned out much on our way, so we're going to go for 40. And with me, we have a lot of the gals come out and they're not really for the middle of the night, and it's freaking hard. We're not letting them in. But we're going to do my mask and everything else. So that's what we're working on right now. Our daily numbers
You said obviously there's a greater demand you're seeing. Can you give us sort of kind of quantify that a little bit as to how much and for how long you've been seeing this increase in?
With the women, well, the women, obviously, thinking about the families, the numbers increase there, their agency increase, especially if they're, they move outside, they can't get to the shelter. And so, at this point, we have 10 that we reserve for the women that are in our baby program, so only 20 are able to come up right now, so we can increase that, we go back up to 30, are able to come up with other grants, plus we can in baby. There's just more people coming out of camping, a lot of times the men are camping and women are staying with them, so they can't. There's just more need for women. We actually see husbands that are even having to buy some out there. It's all part of the situation. But yeah, we have a number of them that knock on the door and want to. We also find that some of them are getting jobs and they want to be able to come in after they got work rather than go down and do the checking system. So we can look at the ones that can check in with us.
Thank you. And for our last update, Anchorage Gospel Rescue Mission.
Yes, good morning. John Lamontia, Anchorage Gospel Rescue Mission. And our mission statement is a meal, a bed, a soul well fed. And our numbers seem to be rising right now because we serve the hungry and the homeless. And we have room for approximately 100 clients right now, and that includes the 30 men in our New Life program. We generally have around 62 male clients every night. We've got room only right now, unfortunately, for 8 women. But I put them in a program that I'm calling Beauty and Grace Shelter Program. It's a 6-month shelter program where the girls don't have to worry about leaving after the first 30 days, like most of the clients. I want a safe place for them where they don't have to have the anxiety of looking for a job and wondering where they're going to stay when that 30-day time frame is up. As I said, our numbers are up right now. We served around 8,600 meals last month, and we had around just total nightly guests, just under 2,500. So I attribute part of that, I suppose, to the effort that is being made to clean up all the camps in the area. I could be wrong, I don't know, but our numbers do seem to be rising. Unfortunately, we can't go beyond that 100 mark. Hopefully in the near future, we're planning a minor expansion, I'll say, but it'll be up to the municipality as to whether or not we can add between 10 and 15 clients. Our program, people stay, our residential program, men stay with us for a year. We try to get them infused with life skills. We teach them about job resumes. We teach them about what happens when you go out on an interview. We're trying to get these people so that they can get out of the cycle that they have been in for so long, like some of the other programs in town. We want to do our part. The only requirement that it takes to come to the mission is you have to be hungry and you need a place to sleep. And that's it. So, any questions?
I don't see any. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to Mr. Flynn.
Can we get a sneak preview of your expansion? I remember the last time we reviewed your conditional use permit. Yeah. Sorry, could you give us a sneak preview of your proposed expansion of your program?
It will not be the expansion of the program. What it's going to be is I want to be able to take in more women clients. And I'm talking to our facilities manager right now about the possibility of where we might open up. But again, the decision will come down to the municipality as to whether or not they allow that. So it's not going to be, we're not going to be adding buildings, anything like that. It's all going to be interior. So and hopefully that'll work out.
In other words, you're thinking of reconfiguring your existing facility? Reconfiguration of your existing facility is your plan?
Reconfiguring your existing facility, interior.
Yeah, on the second floor and, busting out some walls. Hopefully we can add maybe between 12 and 15 beds. I'm not certain of that right now, so don't quote me.
No,
But that's what we would like to do. Because I know there is a problem out there, and I know the municipality is working assiduously on eliminating this problem, and I wish we could do more, but right now our capacity is 100. We cannot go beyond that. Fire Marshal will have something to say. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Gray Jackson has a question, and then Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that you have I'll call it a no alcohol policy. Commission, can you talk a little bit about that for those who may not be aware of it? The no alcohol policy?
Yeah, that came into being under the former director, who was finding that too many fights were breaking out, too much stuff was getting stolen, and the atmosphere was altogether much more undesirable with the presence of alcohol on board. So when a client comes in, they already know they're going to get breathalyzed, they know they can't be stoned, and they know they can't be drunk. But Assemblyman Dunbar was at the mission the other day. I encouraged him and his aide to actually talk to some of the clients. Pick a client, see what they have to say about the atmosphere of the mission. And you'll find, I would say 9 out of 10 clients that you speak with are very glad for the absence of alcohol and drugs on the premises. So that's where we are on that one. And because it's worked out so well, we will continue with that.
And I think Mr. Trainee has a question as well, sir.
Question for you. I know where your campus is. Across the street, there was a liquor store that shut down. It is now open again.
Yes.
Is that causing any problems?
Not as far as I can tell, sir. I don't see any of our guys attempting to go over there. It just hasn't seemed to be a problem. And I had because of what we do in our program, I mean, we are a recovery program, and it troubled me that the men in this program had to be faced with any such thing. And as you well know, you've got the marijuana business going on over there as well. And it troubled me because my thought was, why should they have to deal with us when they're working so hard to extricate themselves from this life that they've known?
Yeah.
But I received some good advice from another CEO of a very large rescue mission. And he said, John, you got to understand, they're going to have to learn to face this down in any case. No matter where they are, it's going to be there. They are going to have learned to just say no and walk away. So in that regard, it's kind of like antibodies, I suppose.
I heard from a lot of our people that live in that area, and they are happy with the job the rescue mission's doing. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
Don't see any other comments. Since Ms. Burke is getting here as fast as she can within the legal limits of traffic laws, why don't we move to item number 6 on our agenda, the United Way, and then maybe Michelle can give us some information on that.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, if I could, to thank this community for being such an incredible, action-oriented and compassionate community. And, you know, this is the first time in, as long as I've been doing this job, that I've seen this kind of synergy between the assembly and the mayor and the incredible social service providers and community members take a stand on this issue. And none of us can do what we do if we don't have the community standing there with us, whether that's taking a stand to end homelessness, supporting the efforts, volunteering, and so on. So in order to reinforce that and state that community demand, this Saturday, we have a rally to end homelessness, and we're going to do this incredibly cool thing. We're going to do a fist bump relay. This is what we stand for, and we're going to break a Guinness World Record. So be there. Let's do this. If I may, can I pass these out? This is you all. This is serious
business that we're all doing, but we need the community behind us and saying, yeah, we all stand for this. We will indeed improve this situation because we're all affected by it. So I'll just pass I'll put these in the back for anyone who wants it. Please be there and bring everyone you know because we are going to slaughter that record. What is the current record? We need to have a minimum of 300, but we're not aiming that low.
No, okay.
Any questions on the fist bump relay? Or other records that we will set? Did I show anything else?
Just show how it's
Well,
done.
with-
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Okay, since Nancy's still not here, but we're prepared to go forward. Melinda or Mark, do you guys want to kind of take over one of the other topics or give us an update?
Sure, thank you. Let me know if you can't hear us. I asked Mark Lassard, who is our program manager for the Department of Health and Human Services for the city. He oversees the emergency preparedness program as well as the Anchorage Safety Patrol and Safety Center contracts and programs. And he has been with the municipality for 20 years now. 20 years, and he's an expert in serving the homeless and vulnerable populations. So I've asked Mark to address the assembly regarding the kind of the unique trends in the safety center and how the intakes have changed, as well as the demographics, the population that's using the safety center now. So I'll turn it over to Mark, and thank you for your preparation, and feel free to ask him questions. He's ready to present the documents that you have in front of you.
Okay, yeah, we should have two things. One is the what we call the dashboard or a snapshot with a graph at the bottom. And then I also prepared another document that I wanted to talk to as far as it's a frequency table. And I guess for the members of the public, there should be extra copies in the back there. So essentially what Melinda asked me initially to come in and talk about was is you can, in our seasonal use graph that's at the bottom of the chart, you can see for so far this year in 2016, our numbers are low for, in relation to what they looked like in the past years. So of course the question that always begs is why are the numbers off? Why are they low? Which is a good thing in this regard. And then for those of you that aren't familiar, of course, Anchorage Safety Patrol, Anchorage Safety Center operates under Title 47, which is protective custody for folks that are incapacitated by alcohol or drugs in a public place. So it's not essentially or exclusively a homeless services program per se. It is protective custody. However, there's a significant segment of the population served that would be homeless. So which is kind of ironic in describing, as I was listening to the other providers talk about how the numbers are up, and then, on the other side of that, our numbers being lower or whatever, are down. So before, the biggest factors that I've seen over 20 years that drive the numbers at the safety center are weather, as demonstrated by, clearly by the seasonality. Even though the numbers are down, that line still follows the seasonality as far as, in the winter the numbers are higher, summer they're lower, okay? And then of course, the next driver that is the money. If there's money in the community, then there tends to be more intoxicated people on the street. That's the, and you'll see there's a significant bump also in seasonality in around October, which is permanent visiting fund time. So the other factors that, I don't have, visibility of, so include things like housing and folks that move away, get jobs, whatever. We really don't have a way to track that. I was talking to Melinda about this earlier. We're very good at showing data of who's been here or who's here. It's hard for me to talk about who's not there and why they're not there. And once also to clarify, that's why I just built this table this morning, because I was thinking about this last night and going over some things, and I thought it was useful to say, we have what we call our top 200. Any given year we're serving at unduplicated count, around 3,000 folks, 3,500 folks or so. Well, however, there's a core group that we refer to as the top 200 and the top 50 that really drive the numbers for us. And as what this table is really demonstrating is that intake frequency as that top 200. If their intake frequency is up, for instance, they were up to in 2013 to between the top end users between 84 intakes and 275 intakes per year. So that also resulted in a record over the 6-year period of 26,500 intakes. So as that frequency goes down, so does our overall intake number go down. So, and obviously in an effort or a way to try to figure out maybe why our numbers are down overall is we spent many years now concentrating on that top 200 folks, pathways to sobriety with Anchorage Community Mental Health Services, the Housing First options, which was identifying homeward bound, identifying top end users to engage them in services, housing, jobs, that type of thing. I guess optimistically, and I don't have the data to support it, but that's the indication is maybe those efforts are paying off. Maybe we're experiencing in conjunction with some good weather, some availability of housing and services. It's having an impact on our overall numbers. Other than that, I think the next step is I think we can look backwards and try to, or we know who the top end users were, let's say in that 2013 year, 2014, 2015, and really making some efforts to find out where those folks are now, where they've come out of that pie. Are they housed? Did they move away? Did they die? Are they sober? Find out what happened. That's a little bit more, peeling the onion back a little bit further, looking a little bit more in depth as far as the analysis. My boss, Steve Ashman, has had conversations with Alaska Housing and Finance Corporation, and we will be able to do it looks like a study to identify our group. Once again, that core group of 200, which it's a 2013, 14, and 15. That group is not going to be 600 people. I anticipate that group will be about 300 or 400 people, and I think we'll be able to know anyways who's still in that group, who's still in the top 200 with us, and we'll be able to narrow that down and then find out really looking specifically, okay, where's the rest of the folks at, and but I don't have that information for you unfortunately today. Any questions?
Questions, Mark? One question, Mark. In the data that you do keep, do you keep track of where pickups occur for the sleep-off center?
We've done years ago. We did a pretty significant GPS study where we were punching each one, and it hasn't changed over many years. It's expanded slightly, but 80% of all our pickups take place down in the down, what we refer to as the downtown core area, and then the rest of the 20% are through Muldoon, Spenard, and to the south part of Midtown.
To the extent any of that data is still available, or even the old data, if it hasn't changed significantly, if you could get us that in some kind of document, if you can get it to Amanda, she'll make it available to the rest of us. It'd just be good to see where the pickups are occurring.
Yeah, and I also believe since we've been the Anchorage Fire Department has been doing our dispatching services since June of 2013. They also record where the calls coming from or where the pickups are taking place in the community. So that should be another avenue that we can gather that data.
Great. And just one final question is, you were talking about getting the sort of the where are they now kind of piece on your frequent flyers, and are there? And it sounds like there is an effort being made to actually do that. You just don't have the information yet. Is there actually a system in place to track that?
Well, there's one is when Housing First, Carlos Manor opened up. There was a university study to look at the impact of emergency response services. So some of that data might be available in that regard. I think the other analysis, but that's fairly narrow, because if they're not involved in that program, we wouldn't know where everybody else was. So this effort is, I guess, to throw the net a bit wider, really look at the core group over the space of 3 years, and it's good. It's definitely more work, more staff time, without having an educated, trained statistician, research analyst, or whatever. It'll be essentially what we can pull together with the resources at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that information, that data would be valuable in the long run to see, we can see these trends of people coming on and falling off, but if we don't have any idea basically, what's driving that or what the result is, we're just making presumptions about whether what we're doing is working. So to the extent we can help you with that, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Linda?
Add one more thing. In this will be a specific type of analysis in our partnership with HFC to be able to, although they cannot necessarily release names, we can provide them with names so that we can decide and determine who actually has received housing over these past few years. We already know that we can analyze all of the information from Carlette Manor, and that opened in December of 2011. So with almost 5 years of housing in vulnerable individuals, we have a lot of information on that. But this one particular partnership with HFC will just be reflecting who has been housed of these 200 to 400 people in their system. So that leaves, of course, that's a huge gap because we know other people will be moving out of Alaska. But we could go as deep as we wanted to with looking at analyzing who may have passed away of that top 200. But when you look at these, the matrix that Mark provided, it is very interesting and noteworthy to see the amount of intakes per year, as he pointed out, from a range of 191 being the top number that an individual, down all the way to 275 to this in 2015, 174 intakes for an individual. So it's important to really understand the matrix to see that in 2013, an individual or more had 275 pickups into the safety center. That's 275 admits, almost every day for an entire year. So we are looking and analyzing those trends, and we'll provide you with information, but please feel free to ask us for specific types of information that we can provide to you to guide the decisions that you have to make. Very vulnerable population and often served. Our goal is obviously to have children never have to go to Covenant House and then get into a cycle of homelessness. If we can intervene earlier with families, then we reduce all of these numbers. So if we can keep our attention at that.
Mr. Dunbar had a question.
Yeah, I just realized while I was listening to your presentation, I'm familiar with sort of the flows and processes that most of the organizations have, but I guess I'm not actually familiar with yours in terms of how long can they stay there? Sort of what's the cycle for a typical person that gets picked up and comes to your facility?
Okay, good question. The Title 47 specifies that a person can only stay at the center for either 12 hours or until they are no longer incapacitated, whichever comes first. So it's a state law. That's our guideline.
So for some of those, 275, for example, are some of them they have to be let go, or you have to be sent out after 12 hours, but they're still in some kind of state, and then they come back just a few hours later, or maybe almost immediately?
Right. So there's a couple scenarios that I guess use as a illustration. So if somebody is still incapacitated after 12 hours, that would probably call AFP and get them to the hospital.
Right.
The second thing is right. It's that alcohol affects everyone differently. People, nobody processes alcohol exactly the same way. So some people, will sober fairly quickly, depending on their health, how much they need, a bunch of factors. So not everyone stays for 12 hours. I think we did an analysis a while back, and the average stay was like 8.6 hours, or so it doesn't get up, not necessarily to 12. So, but once they're no longer incapacitated by law, we can't hold them.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so I remember in one of the previous meetings sometime, maybe a year ago or something, that an individual has to to below a certain number before they're admitted into the sleep out center? Is that still the case? And
No.
and then, and for them to be released, they have to be, they have to blow to find out what their alcohol content is to get out?
Okay, so you're referring to we call it the breath alcohol content test. That's just a tool. The evaluation of whether a person is incapacitated is conducted by a state certified emergency medical technician. So the BRAC, the alcohol test is just a tool. There's not like a line on the wall that says you're above this line, below that line. It's good. It's really, once again, alcohol affects people in their capacities in such a different way that everyone's a little bit different. So.
Mr. Train.
Often your machines tested used for the BRAC?
They calibrate them every day.
Every day?
Yeah. And if you know, and we have so much experience with them, you know, obviously if we get some readings that don't certainly make sense, we'll use a different machine and or recalibrate or retest.
Just want to make sure they're doing it right. They're doing it strictly. Because I know for a while the state had an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't checking to make sure they were calibrated. So thank you.
One other question, and Melinda's kind of response to yours about data. I think it would be particularly helpful since we've, as a municipality, have been funding and supporting the Housing First model with all our efforts, to get some sort of updated data on what we've learned from Carlick Manor, what we've learned from the Merrill Field operation and any of the scattered sites that we're using, as to sort of the efficacy of how Housing First is actually working in Anchorage. To the extent we can show positive results, I think that will be extremely helpful. So
Yes.
whenever you can get that for us in sort of as much of a narrative fashion as can be digested by everybody. So.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Burke, I didn't notice you weren't here before. Nice to see you. Not a problem. Actually, we've managed. It was a good test for us. But I think with that, I think we're ready for what would be item 3 on our agenda, which I think is most of.
Actually, we skipped 6B.
6B. 5B.
5B, sorry.
The outreach board.
The point in time count.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was Nancy going to cover that or something else.
Yes.
Okay, so in whichever order you want to work on
Sure.
for your items, go right ahead.
Okay, so I think maybe I'll just tuck that into the discussion of 3, what was the overarching program report. We've had some opportunities for public education in terms of media coverage of what's happening in camps. I know you've heard from the service providers downtown, and just to tell the story again, I think it's helpful for everyone to hear that there is an entire system that's in flux here in terms of the police engaging people in camps and trying to get them to locations where we can engage them for services, help intervene with mental health, addictions, and medical issues, and promote housing resources to them. And so one of the things we've learned is that our shelter system has been full this summer because of this event that's happening, and some pressure on the downtown shelter. We've also connected with the rescue mission, and they have some limits that are set on people coming into their system, but they've certainly seen people through, and I think you heard from the representative today. So in continuing to think through as we look forward to winter, how we will handle people that were not otherwise able to shelter is on our minds, and we want to connect people with all of the resources that are available. So under tab 6, we compiled a list of rental vouchers, because that's one of the key pieces that needs to come into play for people to move into
housing, whether it be temporary rental assistance for those that can become engaged for work activities and economic stability and remain housed, or whether it's ongoing subsidies for those with disabling conditions. And so there's, it's a 3 or 4 page list of all of the places and the ways that rental vouchers come into the community. Most of them, or all of them, I guess we would say, come in through the federal government, through HUD, but go out into different organizations, the VA, some through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, some come into the community, and we're using home funds that come into Anchorage for some temporary rental voucher assistance. And it's sort of this maze, and that's why when we say, connecting the units with the resources to get people into them can be complex. It's not just where you find the unit and you help the person get into it. You have to figure out which subsidy they qualify for, how to connect them to those resources. And so it's a bit of a maze. So these are the items that are highlighted in yellow on this diagram are the rental vouchers that are currently open in the community, with the exception of the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, the Housing Choice vouchers, which are the community vouchers for anyone who meets income threshold. That opening did finish at the end of August, and they now have a pool of people that they will work with to go work down a list according to when they applied and get those housing resources out. So the overlap of how many people who are in the shelter with that voucher list is not known to us. We don't know how many vouchers that will bring in, but we'll be hearing over the course of the next few weeks that people will receive papers to go look for units and to begin shopping. The other units are the approximately, there's 20 units that are open right now through NeighborWorks for people at the high end of the needs list. There's another 10 or 12 that are municipal funds for people at the high end of the need list. And then there will be the rent up of the John Thomas building. So all total, that could be up to 60 people that will start moving and engaging out. That's all happening as we speak. There are case managers out working applications with people. The outreach team just reviewed this yesterday. So it's a really complicated and hard story to tell the community, but it's important that we remind people that we're engaging people out of camps to shelter or to places where they can access resources, connecting them to rental vouchers. And then lastly, you saw the piece in the paper this week on the landlord liaison, really starting to work with landlords who might be willing to house formerly homeless people, and that completes our system mostly, because the next thing we have to do is make sure that people are able to access jobs and keep those apartments if their subsidies are reduced or go away. So that's the story.
Mr. Train?
Mr. Chairman, the list we just got has the top 200 and the top 50. Are we working to take the top 50 and move them into affordable housing vouchers so we can get them off the top 50 list?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they're identified, so we can, as we get these vouchers, we can move them into that housing.
That will be, we're in a bridge period right now where we have the list, but it's not been formally accepted by the federal government as the official list. So we are working off of the list and connecting those top users to the voucher openings that are open right now officially. In future years, we'll be able to literally just go down that list, find those people, and connect them to the resources as they come online. But the answer is yes, we're doing that. I would like to just say something about that. If you recall the chart where we have, I color-coded some of the interventions with the high needs people at the top in kind of a pink block and then a yellow block of that middle bubble of people. One of the things that was really apparent in mapping out these vouchers is that people who are in the middle, sort of medium intervention area where they need access to some clinical services for Oh, tab 2, thank you. Some clinical services for mental health services or substance services. The challenge that we have is that all of those federal resources, with the exception of the AHFC funding that is open to anybody at a certain income level, the remaining resources of housing vouchers are all pointed at the top needs of the high-level people. And so that becomes a little bit of an issue. This is the chart. If you remember that middle bubble in our first review of the assessments of the cohort of people we started with in January, we think that probably 2/3 of the people are in that middle section, and we have no rental vouchers pointed at that group. And so that's something for us to begin really wrapping into our pay for success proposal, that we probably need a temporary stabilization for rental assistance for people while they get stabilized, get some treatment, and then move out into the community. It's also the place where the work around looking at access to treatment through the Clitheroe site and stabilizing people who are able to go through and participate in treatment, stabilizing them at the end so that they don't cycle back into homelessness and require additional treatment services.
I don't see any questions, Nancy. Thank you for the.
Did I hear you point,
Mr. Flynn?
The count?
Yes, and so then that leaves us, thank you, that was a long way of getting around to Councilmember Flynn's point, that we're going to do a point-in-time count, and I've been thinking about mobilizing the resources to do that in September. We did it in 2012 in the community as a balancing data point for the January count. We did it at the end of September when some of the leaves started dropping, and it was easier to visually see the camps. However, in conversations around our federal funding application, we know that our coordination and the work that happened in January around getting a really specific count of people in the community bolstered our federal funding application with more points. And what's significant about getting more points on that federal funding application is we can actually get over a threshold where we'll get extra, we may qualify for extra resources to have a bonus project, which would allow us to do more housing. And so the partners are having the conversation with me that perhaps it would make sense to do that outreach count at the end of August, so that we can include the count in our September funding application. So some of the partners who look maybe a little bit more white than others right now, like a little like maybe peaked, are thinking through August 31st as the date that we will do shelter and outreach count. It won't be an exact replication of the point in time count. That's a bigger community count, but getting the camp, street, and shelter count will give us one part of a balancing data point for the January count. So that's the update for that.
Mr. Craney had a question.
So Bill, if she's right, if we're gonna do this count 31 August, that means it'll be completed next time we have this meeting, if we do this meeting once a month.
We do this meeting once a month, yes.
So I'm wondering if we could ask the administration to keep us via email updated on when the count is gonna happen. Because if you're planning on the 31st, I'd like to know before that time period if that goal is being achieved. Because next time we have this meeting, they should be able to tell us what the count is, so Mr. Flynn doesn't have to be asking the question.
Well,
Because he will.
That's good.
Yeah, and the reasoning, of course, is that I think our displaced homelessness, meaning people who aren't being serviced, is going to be abnormally low in January vis-a-vis the summer months, and that's why I think it's important to get that extra data to strengthen our case as we seek federal funds.
Yeah, Nancy, you can just keep us informed as you move towards that count. Let us know if you need anything, and let us know if it's progressing.
Sure.
That's fine.
It's also an important data point for us to know the last item on the agenda was about cold weather shelter. We're going to kick back into cold weather shelter time frame, and the family system has a really well-developed plan that involves churches for when there are more people than the shelter can take. We have a few of those components in the adult system, but we need those numbers so that we can adequately plan for overflow shelter for wintertime.
Mr. Tranian and Mr. Dunbar.
Do we have a plan to get this cold weather program out to the public so we get more churches and agencies involved in it, rather than just keep going we've had years past? Is there a plan to try and expand it?
I will ask our family group. The family group is meeting end of this week or next week about that. I think that's a great idea. It would be good to have more churches. I also understand that some of the churches are renewing applications, but that we did have one new church apply to be a cold weather shelter this year, so that's a good thing too.
Because if case in point with Brother Francis and the rest of these that are experiencing high peak now, heaven help us when it gets to 10 or 20 below. It's really going to show a lot unless we've got this in place to turn these people.
It's not getting that cold anymore.
Whatever.
Gotta read the magazine.
You believe that, okay?
Mr. Dunbar.
So, Nancy, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nancy, you and I talked about the fact that we're kind of going through a transition phase right now about, the policy of the administration that I think is largely supported by the Assembly is to aggressively abate the camps. But we don't have the housing online yet to sort of accommodate people who are being pushed out of the camps. And so, I guess we had talked last meeting about trying to expand the cold weather policy in some way. So, maybe it could be available during the summer months. And so I guess my two questions are, one, is the administration still thinking about that, about ways to change the overflow policies and asking us to change the code essentially so that we don't have this again next summer? And then my second question is, do you anticipate this happening again next summer? That is, it would be wonderful if the housing does accommodate enough people that we don't have this kind of pressure on the organizations next summer that we had this summer. But I don't think the administration plans to, and I don't think the Assembly plans to, despite the ACLU wants, changing the policy of aggressively abating the camps. And if that's the case, do you anticipate this happening again next summer? So that's kind of a long question.
I think the data count that we will get later this month, and I think we can pretty much count on that happening at the end of this month. I believe that's going to be informative for us, and that I think we will have some. I don't think that we will have the measure of overflow need next summer if the economic environment remains static over the course of the year. And that's the unknown, is we don't know what's coming for the state. We don't know the unknown is what gives me pause. If we were able to just work this program with just the variables that we have in place right now, I would say that no, next year we'll probably be able to handle it with maybe some new tools around temporary housing for people. But if the winter brings us some more challenges, I don't know what to say about next summer.
And then the second part of that question was, is the administration now talking about asking us to make a code change of some kind?
Yes. We think that code might serve the community better if there were some other variables besides 45 degrees that triggered the ability to do overflow shelter, including people who are vulnerable, or conditions like we had earlier this summer around fire safety. So we wanted to do a little bit of research in what other communities have proposed or done around this, but I think there is something that could be done with that.
Are you leading that effort? Who in the administration is looking into those possible code changes?
We had legal take a look at the existing code and do a few pieces of that work, but now I think the next step will be for me to go back to Deanna's and have some conversations around that.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to go back a little bit, we were talking about housing first, and I was wondering what's the capacity of the Sitka Place facility right now? Are we getting that close to maxed out, or?
There are still 15 units that are open at that housing location. But I'm happy that we are working with Rural Cap to ensure that there are adequate resources for the on-site stabilization. That's really the piece that's missing from the budget documents, and that the new voucher openings that are available, if people desire to live there, we can now rent those up because we'll know that there's the adequate social services on site. So I anticipate that will, vacancy rate will go away.
Great, thank you.
Finally.
And before I get to Mr. Davis, who's got a question on this topic, I just wanted to, in response to Forrest's question, I just want to put on the record that I'm somewhat skeptical with respect to blaming or attributing the overflow at the shelters and everything to our efforts on eradicating the homeless camps, only because I very rarely see government efforts be that efficient. Funny but true. I mean, I'd be very surprised to learn that we're doing such a good job on getting rid of the camps that's causing this mess. I think there are other factors as well. I think that's part of it, but I suspect, and I don't know exactly when we'll be able to discover exactly what's driving this overall perception and reality of increased homelessness system-wide here. But I want to break the narrative that it's just the crackdown in the camps that's causing all this. I find it, I'd be very suspicious of that. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, following up on that, so you do your count in August, and your count is low, but people can't, you expect that, right? Because they've all come out your shelter.
I'm excited to see.
But that's gonna be, it is low. And then didn't you do, I thought you did surveys, you talked to people in the shelters and say, why you're here. We did that before, and they were saying because.
We added that question to the January survey. When did you come to Anchorage? Or how long have you been in Anchorage? Where did you move from? And were you homeless when you came to Anchorage? And in the January count, we had very few people who said they weren't coming from Anchorage. I think there were 12 people who said they'd come from another zip code. So that is another really interesting data point as well, because that's another narrative that I'm not sure we can back up, that people aren't making it economically in other communities and they're coming here. But we've added those questions, which I think will help us understand that.
Mr. David, just been patiently waiting with a question on this topic.
It's not a criticism, just an observation and maybe suggestion. We know now that we have a seasonal influx within a week to 2 weeks after the receipt of the 100th activity. And we have a lot of people come in from remote Alaska and suddenly show up in our community. We're going to miss that opportunity if we don't count the end of August, we count the first part of January. Is there some way we can try to get an idea of what that influx is? We've heard numbers of 200 to 300 people. Not all of them stay, a significant amount of them stay. And as soon as they run out of money from the hotels, they start showing up at the shelters and the fields.
I think the request from this committee for the census of the shelter might give us some of that information if those folks don't leave, if they hit the shelter when they come in. So I think that ongoing data point will be a helpful tool for us going forward. One of the challenges with doing a count around dividend time, whether it be PFD or other dividends, is that people do go to hotels. So you go and do your outreach and you find that people that were there last week are now in a hotel. So that it can change your outcomes as well.
I think that one of the key things is that we are gathering data and we're putting an emphasis on that. And, you know, for a long time, the problem of homelessness, or whatever we're going to call it, has been pretty a gray area. People didn't really understand exactly this population. It's transient, it comes and goes. The more data we get about, you know, and Nancy's efforts actually individualized who these people are, is going to help us form solutions that make sense. So I think we're in that stage now where really the best thing we can do is at every opportunity get as many data points as we can on all these various factors. So, and the administration is working towards that, and I think that's going to pay dividends, we just have to be patient to see those numbers. Is there any more, Nancy?
I see that our Parks and Recreation Director, John Rod, is here. Would the committee like to hear about the cleanup crews? The 10-member cleanup crew has been very successful this summer. I think that would be helpful for him.
More than anything, sure. John?
Thanks, Nancy. Part of this joint effort, what we've been trying to accomplish specifically is we've always had a resource and community work service, which is a coordinated program, beneficial not just for this effort, but as most people in the city know, we're tasked with lots of opportunities.
Can you yell at us a little more, John?
I can yell as loud as you want.
Okay.
Then please do, we're here. Sure.
The community work service has been a one-size-fits-all shop for a lot of different purposes around the municipality, whether it's moving the prosecutor's office or it's transitions. We do a little bit of everything. But in this particular effort, it's really been focused this year on this homeless initiative and try to figure out how we can do to clean up as many of these sites as possible, particularly those that are very, very visible, and as well as those that are highly active. And we get a lot of complaints, we get a lot of feedback, we get a lot of requests. Snow dump at Davis, everybody knows, or these people, if you're familiar with the program, knows that's a hot spot. Chester Creek Greenbelt's a hot spot. There's multiple locations. But through the administration's support, we brought on a dedicated crew with one supervisor and 10 other people this summer. Last year cumulatively was about 3,400 man hours. We collected approximately 55 tons of material that went to the landfill. Okay, that was all of last year. We're at over 5,800 hours, man hours. This year, we just passed 92 tons that has been collected through these various sites. Put that in perspective, I don't know the equations as Nancy views it, I just know what we deal with. And the increase, and we've seen the increase, whether it's weather driven, whether it's economics, whatever all those reasons are, a major increase. And we're not seeing it really decrease by numbers, we just see them move pod to pod to pod to pod. What we're also seeing now is a more aggressive behavior from the individuals that we are approaching, particularly through the abatement process, and that requires more APD assistance, because we're not going to put, whether it's a community work service individual or a staff person, in harm's way. So we know we're being effective, but there's also, we're reaching a point where how effective can we be? We don't want something bad to happen. And at the same time, we want to complement all the efforts of trying to get people out of the camps and into housing. So, to put it in perspective, I think when the account, one of the things that we have as a resource this year is the Hansen portal. We now have a comprehensive listing. So as sites are abated, they're identified literally by GPS. Okay? And we have a record of when they come in, who sent the information in, how it's accumulated, when it's been posted, when it's cleaned up, and then you see oftentimes reported, and then you see follow-up, same people, same location, another report number, another report number. A hotspot in your area, of course, is over at Centennial. You know, we're frequently over there. And the other piece that I should probably tell people is that these people, not only are they getting a little more aggressive, they're getting more bold. And we now have a police report that was filed because over in Pena Park, which is next to Centennial Campground area, we've now found that they're breaching the security area, and they've gone in and started removing construction materials and things like that. So now EPD's actively involved, and that was from the citizen over on the boundary that actually called it a couple days ago. Bottom line is, we're doing our best to keep up with what the initiative is. We're hopeful that the more pressure we put on helps Nancy, because as they reach people that are becoming frustrated either with being moved or having their belongings, we can take the belongings, we have to go through the processes, that's probably not the right word, but the materials that are left behind, we hope that this pressure helps her through their process of reaching somebody and getting them out of this environment. So, we're the push, is what we're doing. But I think we're making a difference. We hear a lot more now from residential areas, community councils, we hear from businesses that it's being effective, it's cleaning up sites, it's cleaning up areas. But we know there are hot spots that are not gonna go away. Because we can't just clear cut every piece of parkland, that's not gonna work. So, it's a little bit of information on where we're at, but like I said, to put some perspective, here we are, 7.5 months into the year, and we're almost equal to what we did all last year.
Thanks, John. Mr. Tranny and then Mr. Weldon have a question.
John, on behalf of my assemblies, I want to thank you. You spent a lot, your team spends a lot of time in the Campbell Park Community Council area. Thank you very much. And I appreciate it. I understand you guys recently cleaned up that Tudor and Lake Otis area where the two gentlemen sit on the pad and throw all their garbage in the back.
Yeah.
I told you guys got 20 bags out of there. I just want to let you know they're back again.
I know.
Say, somebody might want to take a dumpster and put it there.
I wish I had
Because
an answer for
I have
all
no
of
problem
this.
with them asking for money on the sidewalk, but they're going into islands in traffic, and my worry is one's gonna get hit. So, anyway, thanks for you cleaning up that area. It gets to be a mess.
Well, we're doing the best we can. You know, we're not in enforcement, we're not trained in that, discipline. But we're trying to make a difference as best we possibly can. There are hot pockets that we know they're there, we frequent. It's, each week we cycle through certain areas. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Anyway.
Mr. Weldon.
So why are they more aggressive at the local, sir?
They're tired of being moved. A lot of these people have been left alone. Smaller groups, maybe not problems. More reports that have come in. Now we've got this portal system. We get the information, we contact the captain posts it, the data goes back in, 15 minutes later we're back there, and now they've got it on site. And it's becoming uncomfortable. Some of them now realize that they can't just build an abode, if you want to call it, for lack of a better phrase. But they can build a structure and build a plan to have a home. We're going in and intervening. And this is our relightment. But at the same time, we only press as hard as we can press, but as soon as we get a reaction, we've had everything from threats with broken bottles, we've had butcher knives. We've had people get pretty aggressive out in the field. Our position is, you see it, you back off, you don't do anything, you report it, you wait for a presence to be there that can help, let them deal with it, and then we'll do what we can.
Thanks, John. Ms. Gray Jackson, Mr. Tranny, have leave us for another meeting. Nancy, is there anything further on your reports?
I don't think so, other than just to follow up, when John had shared with me that dynamic is happening, I think it makes some sense for us to begin maybe pairing up our outreach workers. We're going for a period of time with the CAP team, and maybe that's a pairing that we can also do to just have some more support around those workers and to really engage those folks. And, if you're tired of being moved, let's get you someplace where you can be and that you won't be moved out. Let's get you housing. So that's a thought that we have, and we're gonna explore that.
That sounds wise. Any questions? Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in our last meeting, we were talking about a number of people that might be getting released from correctional institutions because of the change in law. And are we trying to track an increase of people that are becoming homeless because of that, or is it too soon to try to count those people?
It's truthfully, it's something I don't think we have our minds around yet, because the number of people that are diverted from being sentenced or in those settings is also a group. There are people who are being released earlier, and then there's some people that are being diverted. And it actually is a good reminder that we can put something in our survey around that question to see if that gives us another data point. But something that I think we can connect a little closer with the Reentry Coalition, who maybe there could be productive conversations there that I'm just not aware of.
All right, great, thank you.
Anything else for Nancy? All right, seeing none, we still have a little bit of time, which will give us some opportunity to see if anybody has any comments or questions in the audience. Just a reminder that there is pizza in the back for all of you, so after the meeting, please go back and do damage to that. Also, if you are not on our email list and would like to be notified of the meetings of this committee in the future, please let Amanda Mosier, who's back there in the center, have your contact information, and she'll include you in our email list, and you'll be notified, and we got free pizza for life. Also, and the gentleman from the rescue mission, sir, I know it's difficult for you to hear back there. In the future, feel free, there's always seats up here. If you don't mind being, misunderstood as an assembly member, you feel free to sit up here where you can hear. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
With that, does anybody, Mr. Oliva? Yes, sir.
Yes, I wrote a letter, a follow-up to the last meeting, and I sent it to the entire assembly, this committee, and hopefully everyone got a copy of it by email. I got none, no, zip, nada, a response. And I think the important response is for the shelter in Beans to get a private security guard, get certified medic, and also commercial garbage pickup. What's lacking in this meeting is the public input. I think this is more singing to the choir than the neighborhoods that are affected. So your solutions have to involve people who are affected by the overflow. And that's me being at the root of this. So I made copies of the letter. I appreciate inputs. I offer tours. And I can remain civil. If I use any four-letter words, it's mostly love and cash. International languages.
Thanks, Ryan. Your letter was included, we all received your letter and also was included in our packets. And just because you don't receive necessarily a response, I mean, the issues you're dealing with are big, and as you know, it doesn't mean that they've fallen on deaf ears. It just means that no one has taken action on anything you've requested yet or disagrees with you.
Or for
So,
the last 20 years.
yeah.
Hopefully, it takes time.
Well, we appreciate you representing the public at these meetings and continuing to do so, and thankful that you remain civil. So thanks a lot.
Because I know other four-letter words.
I know you do.
They're every day if I'm homeless.
Well, we appreciate you keeping it clean here. It's a family show. Anyone else? Any comments, questions, concerns on this issue? Be glad to hear from you. Got a bunch of people in the room here. All right, everybody's pretty satisfied. Oh, Nancy.
Can I ask if we might put someone on the spot, Mr. Jesse, who's here from the Mental Health Trust, around the SB 91, and I know that you're connected in with the Judicial Council and others. Do you have any information that you could maybe bring us on that topic that was asked about the people who?
Well, I am a member of the Criminal Justice Commission, and part of our recommendations were part of SB 91. The governor just signed that bill relatively recently. The Department of Corrections is still developing their pretrial services unit, so I don't think you're probably going to see much impact in the short run until the department and the court system gets geared up to implement all the provisions. So, but I think it's an important thing to keep an eye on because certainly the intent behind that legislation isn't just to move people from the criminal justice system into a homeless situation where they're impinging on other public services. So I think the short answer is you haven't seen much impact because there probably hasn't been much yet.
Follow up on it, Jeff. The part of the notion or the concept behind the measure was to add treatment and other, services that would help these people not be recidivists, things like that. And the big criticism you hear about it is that there's really nothing guaranteed funding as far as any kind of treatment services or any type of help in that regard. Do you have a comment on that? Is that accurate, or are you as part of the group confident that we're going to see something other than simply the reduction in the sentencing?
Well, it's not totally accurate to say that there's zero. There were additional resources. A couple $1 million went to the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault to provide some additional services there. There's also a couple $1 million that went to health and social services. We expect a lot of that to end up funding the reentry centers. And as you know, I'm sure you've had partners present before. That's a very effective strategy to get people housing, employment, and support for recovery. Thanks to Senator McKinnon, the challenge was, even though we expect long-term savings, in the short run, we're dealing with a pretty significant fiscal crisis. And so she was very creative in identifying the marijuana tax prospective receipts as a funding source for that. I do expect that to be a continuing challenge because you do have to front-end load those support services if you want to get the results that we're saying are going to be achieved. And I guess the last thing I want to say, because there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation out there about SB 91. Fundamentally, you either believe the science and the outcomes that other people have gotten by doing the same things, or you don't. And that's what the Commission and the Pew Foundation did. We didn't just sit down and come up with these bright ideas. Well, let's try this. What we did is looked at the science and looked at the data, and what we learned is that for many people, more incarceration pre-trial actually results in more criminal behavior. So if you want to reduce criminal behavior, you have to be smart about who you're incarcerating for how long and when. The science is also pretty clear that for most crimes, longer incarceration also doesn't lead to better outcomes. The other thing that we learned is that the major places where the prison population has increased is pre-trial. So the overall number of violent felons in corrections has not changed significantly over 10 years. What has increased is the number of people who are incarcerated pre-trial. Part of that's because the legislature thought, well, let's give judges more tools for how to work with people pre-trial. So we'll say, well, not just money bail, but third-party custodians, ankle monitoring, 24/7 alcohol, all these interlock devices. But what ended up happening is in many cases, judges would say, that's great. So you need bail, you need a third-party custodian, you need ankle monitor, you need 24/7. If these people were that good about organizing stuff, they wouldn't have ended up in jail. So we've tried to move on that. The other major area is nonviolent, particularly drug offenses that have just, the amount of anger and fear that we have over those offenders has resulted in a set of sentences that's disproportionate to the science on their rehabilitation. So I know that's a lot more than you asked for, but I think it's going to be a continuing challenge to make sure that we do invest in those support services, particularly the reentry centers and housing, employment, and treatment.
Thanks, Jeff. Mr. Peterson, I have a question for you. Oh, Mr.
So we look very similar.
East Anchorage.
Same age.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. I appreciate that. And I know you and I have been working on the drug part at least since 2012. So it's been a long time coming. But I wasn't aware that the TPC, which I agree with you, I think the TPC system needs to reform because I don't think it's being used how it was originally intended. Was there a change of that for that in SB 91, or are there future how and when judges can assign a TPC?
I don't think that particular provision was changed, but yes, the general framework has been changed, and that's what the pretrial services unit that the department's putting together is gonna come into play.
Thanks, Jeff. Last chance, last comment, anyone? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.